Hi guys, so this is our final video for today. This is our Reader's Workshop video. For this reading lesson, you can use your book from Book Club, or if you have another chapter book, or if you've been reading on Epic and you want to use a chapter book from there, you can do that as well. Hopefully you guys are still reading your chapter book from our book club, and if not, that's okay. And so I just want to kind of refresh my memories the last time that we read from this book or we did this lesson. We made all kinds of connections, right? We talked about the different ways we can make connections, where we can do text to text when we compare a text to another text, or we can do text to self where we compare something that's happened to us in our personal lives to like something that's happening in a book. Text to media when we compare a text to a movie or a TV show, and then text to world, right? When you compare a text to like something that's happening currently in our world, right? And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to really notice and analyze tension in a story. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen so we can go over our learning intentions for this video. One second as I do that. And here we go. So our learning intention for today is, today we're going to notice the tension between characters in a story. Our success criteria, like how do I know I'm successful in doing this, is that I can write a paragraph explaining the tension between characters. Language intention, I use words like, ooh, I say, you say, tension, and conflict. And our social intention is I do the work even when no one is looking. And I'm going to continue to demo. I'm going to continue to show the strategy I want you guys to work on today using this book called I Survived the San Francisco Earthquake, 1906. The last time we did this lesson or we talked about this book, I asked you guys to really think about all the things you know about earthquakes, and I read the first 2 chapters to you. So let's look at what that word tension means, right? I say, you say, one more time, tension. So tension means a state of unfriendliness between individuals or groups. So I actually chose a really funny Bitmoji of Miss Delgado and I getting into an argument or fighting. So tension is when you are, like, you have conflict, right? There's a feeling of conflict between a character and another character, or a character and something that might be happening to that person or to that character. So I am going to ask you to write that word down in your Reader's Workshop notebook. Write it down now. So you're going to write tension, a state of unfriendliness between individuals or groups. And then later on, I'm going to ask you to write a paragraph with me. Right now, I'm going to ask you to quickly unpause me so that we can continue with the book. So you should have that definition now in your notebook. And 1 second while I make this bigger. All right, so last time, I'm going to just go back to my last paragraph that I read, just so that I can quickly summarize. Oh, right? Summarizing is a really good strategy that we're always doing. So if I remember correctly, Leo is feeling this earthquake, right? It's happening right beneath him and everything is shaking, things are falling. So the last line in chapter 2 was, next thing Leo knew, he'd been smashed against a brick wall and blood was gushing out of his nose. So now we're going to continue with chapter 3. Oh, and before I go to chapter 3, I remember we learned that there's he doesn't have a lot of money. He sells newspapers. It's 1906. Children were forced to work, right? It's not like today where you have to wait till you're like 16, 17, 18 to have a job. Kids used to have to work to make a living to either help their parents or in order for them to survive and, you know, have money to buy food. And so he sells newspapers and he makes money that way. Not a lot, but he does make some money doing that. And then he happens to have a gold nugget in his pocket. And that gold nugget was passed on to him by his grandfather. And it's something he doesn't want to sell or use as money. He wants to hold on to it because it has significance to him, right? It's special to him. So remember that as I'm reading chapter 3. Hand it over, said a raspy voice. Leo didn't have to see the face to know who was talking. It was Fletch Sykes, the most brutal thief in the neighborhood. The other kid had to be Wilkie Barnes, a giant of a boy who went everywhere Fletch did. When Fletch was just 5 years old, the story went, he'd been attacked by a pack of stray dogs. He'd survived, but one of the dogs had bitten his throat. The bite ruined his voice and turned Fletch vicious. Fletch and Wilkie didn't just steal food and pick pockets. Sometimes they beat kids up just for fun. A few months ago, they'd been caught by the police and sent to a work farm up north. Leo had heard a rumor that they had escaped. He'd heard that they were hiding out in an old abandoned saloon on Rincon Hill. And now here they were, back to their old vicious tricks. You can't take my money. You can take my money, Leo said, trying not to sound as terrified as he felt. We don't want your money, Wilkie said. The kid was a monster. He had to weigh almost 300 pounds with smooth, chubby cheeks like a baby with a steel fist. What do you want? Leo asked, his knees shaking. You know, Fletch growled. Leo's heart stopped. Of course he knew. Somehow Fletch had found out about Leo's gold nugget. But how? Leo hadn't told a soul about it, except Morris, that little pest of a kid who buzzed around Leo like a fly. Leo had showed him the gold a few weeks ago. He must have blabbed about it to kids on the street, and the story had gotten back to Fletch and Wilkie. Fletch pushed Leo's face harder into the wall. The bones of Leo's cheek felt like they would crack, like the shell of an egg. Take my money, Leo said again. I have more than $1. Take it all. We will, Fletch said with a rasping laugh, but we want the gold too. Hand it over. It was Papa's voice in Leo's head. Leo knew there was no way he could fight these guys, no way to outrun them. Wilkie was the fastest kid in the neighborhood, but that gold had been Papa's prized possession. Leo couldn't just give it up. No, Leo said, summoning up all of his strength. He whirled around and broke free from Fletch's grip. He made it about 3 steps before Wilkie caught him by the back of the shirt and threw him onto the ground. Slam! Leo landed hard, biting his tongue. Hand it over, Fletch shouted in his creepy, strangled voice. No, Leo yelled again. What happened next took only a minute. Wilkie picked Leo up by his shirt, holding him in the air as Fletch emptied Leo's pockets. Then Wilkie threw him into a pile of garbage. The 2 goons walked away, laughing. Blood dribbled from Leo's mouth. His head throbbed. But the worst was the searing pain from somewhere deep inside, like something had been ripped out of him. His gold was gone. So I want you to just think about the tension in the story, right? If there's tension between characters, who are the characters? What's the tension? What's the conflict? What's happening in the story? I want you to think to yourself what kind of tension is happening. And you can answer out loud at home while I share my screen again. All right, so now you're gonna write with me. So give me a second, guys. You could probably see my screen. Here we go. So we're gonna start in your reader's notebook by writing, in the book, I Survived the San Francisco Earthquake, 1906. There's a lot of tension. For example, there's tension between Leo, Fletch, and Wilkie. The earthquake just occurred, and suddenly Fletch and Wilkie appeared to take away Leo's money. The problem is that the 2 boys not only want to steal his money, but also the gold nugget, which carries a lot of meaning for Leo. I need to use some textual evidence. So I'm gonna say, for example, and I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. Notice how I'm going back in the text to look for a quote that I can use to support this idea that there's tension between these characters. Let me see. Oh yeah, look at this. Fletch pushed Leo's face harder into the wall. The bones of Leo's cheek felt like they would crack, like the shell of an egg. So I'm gonna use that as my textual evidence, Fletch. So for example, here's an example of the tension between the characters is where it says, comma, and here's my quotation or my quote, Fletch pushed Leo's face harder into the wall. The bones of Leo's cheek felt like they would crack, like the shell of an egg. Period. And I'm going to end it with my closing quotation mark so I see where my quote ends. And I'm just reread what I have so far and then maybe add a closing sentence to my paragraph. And I'm going to make sure I indent because this is a paragraph. So in the book, I Survived the San Francisco Earthquake 1906, there's a lot of tension. For example, there's tension between Leo, Fletch, and Wilkie. The earthquake just occurred and suddenly Fletch and Wilkie appear to take away Leo's money. The problem is that the two boys not only want to steal his money, but also the gold nugget, which carries a lot of meaning for Leo. An example of the tension between the characters is where it says, Fletch pushed Leo's face harder into the wall. The bones of Leo's cheek felt like they would crack, like the shell of an egg. At the end of the chapter, we find out Wilkie and Fletch end up defeating Leo and taking his gold nugget, and he feels upset. All right, so this is a juicy paragraph, guys, and this is using the book that I'm using as a demo, but I really want you to try this out with your own chapter books that you have at home. If you're reading, I know in my class I had a few students reading Bat Boy, or Boy Called Bat, not Bat Boy, a Boy Called Bat, Tale of Despereaux, right? Some of those books. In the other two classes, I'm not sure which books you guys were reading or you chose from our book tasting, but make sure that you take it out, read for a little bit, read a chapter, and really think about the tension between the characters and write a juicy paragraph. Remember that you can send me a picture to my phone number or have your parents email it to me. I want to highlight Leslie Velasquez because she's been sending me her work to my phone number. So thank you for that, Leslie. See you guys on Monday.